Okay, so I think everybody knows, why we're here. And I'm just, going to say just a few words about Jim, and there's actually some pictures and some stuff floating around up on the screen. So this is, Jim's family. His wife Bonnie's here, and the rest of the family. I personally didn't know too much about Jim. I mean, I knew Jim for a while, a long time. He was born in 1944 on February 7th, and when he passed, he was only 77. So, Jim was much too young. So, things about Jim. So, Jim was an honorary director of this association. And he was a Hall of Fame inductee in 2011. And like I said, I didn't know him too well on a personal level, but what I did know was this. For some reason, and I don't know why, I don't know, maybe Bonnie knows, and some people may know, but I don't know why, for some reason, Jim fell in love with this association. Okay. And he was here for a long time. And he was our legal counsel. And for the longest time, we never paid Jim a penny. Okay? We just paid his expenses to come to the association. And eventually we started paying him. We gave him $1,500 a year. And then we raised it at a certain time to $3,000. And till the very end, we were only giving him $3,000 a year to do any of the work and all the work that we had asked for him to do. And he did anything that we asked him. So some words that came to my mind when I started thinking back about Jim on a level that I knew him was this. Jim was very witty and funny. He was very, very knowledgeable about a lot of different topics, and he was very professional. Jim was a tough guy, but he was very kind and very giving. Very caring and devoted. And he loved to tell stories. He would tell stories all the time about his experiences. So that's my recollection. That's my recollection of Jim, and that's really all that I can remember. I didn't know him as some other ones do, on a personal level. So what we're going to do is different people are going to come up and speak and tell their things they remember about Jim. But before we do that, Steve Feldman, who couldn't be here, recorded a video from home. So we're going to play that first, and then we'll have some speakers come up and talk.
Haley Jordan, current treasurer of the IAI-CDV, here with Steve Feldman, prior president and previous owner of Southern Ice Cream. Steve, we are here today to talk about your memories of Jim Roberts. Can you tell me how long you were with the association?
I've been with the association since 1973.
And Steve, when and how did you meet Jim Roberts?
Met Jim Roberts a few years after that. In 1973, Jim, who was an IRS attorney and went in business for himself, met a fellow by the name of Tom Yeager, who was a member of our association. Tom was having a problem with the IRS in regard to the employee-employer situation. The IRS ruled that his truck drivers, ice cream men, were all employees. So Jim took the case mainly because he had no other clients. He was brand new. Jim tied in with Avon Cosmetic people, who are all independent contractors. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and they prevailed. And that's how I met Jim Roberts. Jim came the year that he won. He might have been 75 or so. Came to our convention and gave a seminar and spoke to that. Might have been the keynote speaker, I'm not sure. That's how we met.
How did Jim impact the association over the past years?
Well, Jim helped us out with not on almost everything. Every crisis that we had, Jim was there. We had an insurance crisis, Jim was there. We had independent contractor, Jim was there. We had legislative crisis all over the country, Jim was there. Jim was the one that helped us out, helped the association out, and helped the individual companies when a city put an ordinance against vending, street vending. Jim, with the rest of us, came to the rescue, and then many times we got that reversed. Jim, one of the biggest cases was when I was president, the state of New York, they mandated, or were about to mandate, that they needed like a school crossing guard. They needed a crossing guard in every ice cream truck throughout the state, which virtually would have put us out of business. So Jim put me in touch with an individual, a lobbyist, and he put us in touch with the state representative, and we had the ability to be able to turn that around to the degree that they used our IIC V at the time, our model legislation, that ended up becoming the law in the state of New York.
Steve, what is one of your best memories of Jim?
I have a lot of memories of Jim, but I remember right after September 11th, Jim asked Becky and I to stay an extra day and go out on a boat with him that he was going to rent, a small boat. I thought it would be a real big boat, small boat, and go riding in Florida. So we said okay, and Jim took us around, and we went up towards a cruise ship, and the Navy, somehow in a Navy boat with 50 caliber machine guns, came running up to us, pointing them at us, and Jim said to me, "Let me do all the talking, I'm the attorney." I didn't say anything, but we ended up getting out of there. But I'll never forget that. It's the only time I've been scared a lot. I was that time.
What are you going to miss the most about Jim?
He was always there. Jim was the calm voice, the reasonable voice. We would be at we'd be at an association meeting, everybody arguing, everybody wanting to hear themselves talk. Everybody had a stage, and Jim would just sit there and listen to us argue about raising the dues $5, or many of the other things, silly things that we really talked or debated. And then we'd come up with an issue, and Jim would step into that issue because it was a legal matter, and Jim would talk and we'd all listen. You wouldn't hear a peep. Also, Jim usually gave a seminar every year, and many times I had to give a seminar. And I never wanted to give the seminar the same time scheduling that Jim was giving to one. Two reasons. First, nobody would come to listen to my seminar, and I wanted to come and listen to Jim's seminar. So we tried to put Jim all alone in his seminar so we could all go.
That's, for those of you who don't know Steve Feldman, he's a very, very witty guy. So next, Alan Drazen's going to come up and say some words.
Good afternoon. First, my respects to Bonnie and the Roberts family. Jim was a great friend and an amazing individual. I'm proud to say a few words about Jim Roberts today. You see, as we all know, in this world, there's givers and takers. And in Jim Roberts' case, he was the ultimate world-class giver. He gave of his time, knowledge, experience, and possessions, and so much more. He gave to the association as a champion of our rights, our right to stay in business against all odds. Jim saved many of us, both individually and more importantly as a group. He selflessly gave time after time. I was fortunate to work with Jim as president and the chairman of the legislative committee in regards to many of the issues that Steve Feldman described. Jim operated with one sole purpose, and that was to win, and most of the time it was to win for us. He counseled me and guided me to making good decisions to allow our members to survive through many challenging attacks. Again, a lot like what Steve Feldman talked about. I was also fortunate to have visited Jim and Bonnie at their home in Birmingham. And on that occasion, I brought Jim a sweater of which he reminded me and thanked me every time he saw me after that. Jim said that I provided a random act of kindness. That was nice to hear, but in fact, it was not a random act of kindness. It was a small way for me to show Jim, the ultimate giver, that I learned an important lesson from him. You know, from the Bible, Jim talks about it's better to give and receive, and Jim was the ultimate at giving. Jim, as you no doubt are hovering over us today, I thank you again. For me personally in this group, for the blessing of having called you a great friend, and for everything that you have given selflessly to this organization. Jim Roberts, you were the ultimate gift to us, and we will never forget. Thank you.
So next up is Bruce Ginsburg.
Bonnie. There are no words, but I'll say just a few. Steve was amazing. Alan was amazing. Huss is going to say some things. Many of us have Jim in our hearts. Couple things. Kenny touched on at the board meeting yesterday. We were, due to the pandemic, we were in serious debate about whether we should have this convention in person. And that debate was taking place throughout the summer as the next wave of Delta was coming upon us. And we had an executive board call. We were lucky Jim would participate in all of our calls. And we were on the fence. We didn't know what to do. And Jim was so alive. He was so strong. He was so determined that we could get through this and that we should, in fact, get together because that's what we were meant to do. And he gave us the directive, the courage. And I said to Kenny after the call, man, I'm so glad Jim was there to help us think it through and give us that, that spirit. What you don't know is that he called me like 3 days later because we made the decision we're going ahead. He called me 3 days later. I pick up the phone. Bruce, it's Jim. Just want to make sure you guys didn't change your mind. He was unbelievable. As you know, Jim got involved with the independent contractor status and really saved our industry because it would have been put out of business if operators treated independent vendors like employees, and Jim taught us. And our founders were smart enough to align with Jim and listen to Jim and have Jim come and talk to new members about the value of doing it the right way. So I'd like to say that over the years, as Alan said, where Jim would be available to help us through a variety of crises, that to some degree you can say, because most of us all started 100% mobile vending, push carts, street carts, we were all street people. None of us were distributors. And what Jim did, in essence, if you think about it, is he helped us buy some time so we could all grow up and become distributors, become DSD, and still have mobile vending as a viable business in this country. I've joined the industry, even though Manny tagged me along since I was knee-high. Most of you will remember that. I joined full-time in 1980, and Jim put his arm around me at one point, probably the first convention I attended, and he said, you know, you got to come to Birmingham, because I do work for a beer distributor, and bottom line is, I think this is what you want to be when you grow up. I said, a beer distributor? He said, no. No, but just come down. So I jumped on a plane, went to, he said, I'm going to show you an agreement. I'm going to teach you some things. Manny said, go. And I went, and Jim wouldn't give me a copy, nor did I ask for one, but he talked to me and taught me and a few others about the value of thinking long-term. And that's why we've talked about the beer distributors, because they had a contract that was basically created for the life of a distributor. And the distributor, providing they met certain goals and objectives, could at some point hand that distributorship down to their lineal dependents, providing they were capable and desirous, and if not, they could flip it back to the main company, Budweiser or whatever. And this was Jim's idea. I mean, my goodness. He helped create value and wealth for independent business people and help grow brands, just a different category, but he wanted us to take it into our category, and we have to some degree. I'll share one. I could share many really good stories. Bonnie would be mad at me and she'd be happy with me. But one I will say is that along the way, Jim almost killed us. Because not only was he a great lawyer, he was an adventurer. He was a pilot. He was a lover of great wine and food and things, and a storyteller. But he had somehow ended up with 3 or 4 or 500 acres, I'm not sure, it was a lot, up in New Hampshire. Now, what's this, southern boy owning land in a place called Sugar Hill, New Hampshire? And so he called me up, and my dad's place was in Charlestown, Mass., and he said, hey, Bruce, can I leave my Jeep at your place? I'm going to fly up sometimes, but you can use it. You're a young guy. You could use a Jeep. You could use it when I'm not here. I only ask you do one thing. Once in a while, I'm going to call you. I'm going to fly up there. I just want you to start that Jeep up so when I get from Logan over to your place, I can have the car ready to go, and I'm going to go up to Sugar Hill, and we're going to go to Log Cabin, and you should join us. Well, year after year, we'd have that Jeep, and Jim would fly up with family and have a great time. And he said, you got to come up. And at the time I was dating Robin, and he said, you and Robin got to come up. I'm going to show you my land. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you some of this land. I want you to build a log cabin. I want you got to do this. You got to think about someday you're going to marry that girl you're dating, and you're going to want to have a log cabin. I want you to have this. I said, Jim, I can't do that, Anyway, we went up, and he takes that Jeep into uncut roads, way up. And he's showing us all this land and there's trees and it's not a road. And then we come back down. Well, he hits New Hampshire, it's still cold, there's still ice on the ground. He hits a patch of ice. We're coming down this road. He lost control of that Jeep. And I heard a few Hail Mary, I heard him say something under his breath, but we get to the bottom and we're all shooken up, and he just looks back just like that, and he said, "Oh, we made it." It's like that. Anyway, I'll never forget that, and he reminded me of that story of how white I looked, and because I lost all color in my. But let me just say, with Jim, he's up there. He's a Hall of Famer for us. And when you think about some of our Hall of Fame members, and you look at that list and that picture, you got to look at Jim and you got to realize how important he was to us and how much we loved him and how much he loved us. I just want to tell you one little additional funny saying, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but way back when we were a very small association, very, very small, with one guy who was another Southern guy, talked with an accent, had a very high voice, and you look at our budgets now and you look at what we're doing and investing into our business so we can get education and we can come better and this and that. Well, way back when, this association was really more about just taking a breather after the season, and we were happy that Jim would join us and also educate us. But we had an associate executive director that saw we had maybe a couple $1,000s extra in our budget, and Alan will remember this. And so the executive director said to the board, "Well, guys, I see you got a couple extra $1,000 in the budget here." And I'm saying, "Well, what about me? I could use some extra money." And that was his way of asking us for a raise. So I see Jim down at the end of the table, giving that type of expression. We got out of that situation with, politely. And then Jim whispers into my ear, and it was a Southern expression, I guess. I don't know what it was, but he said, "He's more full of shit than a Christmas turkey." And it was, it was wisdom. It was help, along the way. But I miss him. I loved him. I'll always think about him. And Bonnie will, thank you, and thank you, family, for being here. And thank you for letting me say a few words.
Thank you, Bruce. I always leave it to Bruce to tell some good ones. Where's Haas? Haas is next.
Hello, everyone. This is a difficult subject for me. I hope I don't break down. Jim was a friend. Jim was a mentor. Jim was a brother. And how do you describe that relation? It's very hard. How do you describe someone that you look up to? Someone that every time you have an issue, you go to. He used to call me my boy Haas. And every time he come to association, he was by the pool, 4 or 5 people sitting around him, and he was giving advice, and I was jealous. This is my time. Once a year, I want to see him, and he was always busy. He would be the kind of guy walk in that door, somebody is speaking on the stage, and he would not say a word, standing back there, but everybody would feel his presence. Because one way or another, he touched their life. For those of you been here for a long time, he always there for you. One time he told me, anybody knock on my door, I have to answer because God asked them to call me. God somehow put it in their mind, so call Jim. So that's, I have to answer. For those reasons, Bruce, by the way, you forgot half of that story. We went together to Jim's and talking about master distribution and gold standards, and that's how the Wells Blue Bunny program through Blue and concessionaire for the Unilever and all those were born from that idea. I remember he took us to bedroom upstairs and Bonnie catered to us and everything else. There are so much to say, and I wanted to write it down, but I thought that I should speak from the heart. Jim was one time called me in the airport. Those times there was no security in the airport. I think it was 1988, something like that. He said, Haas, I'm in Dallas in the airport and I have my mom with me. And I said, Jim, wait there, I'll be there. So I drove to the airport. I met his mom, beautiful Southern lady with, I mean, you could see why Jim, who he is. And after that, every time he told that story, in every time that we met with someone else. Right now, I'm sure Jim up there, he's a center of attention in the heaven with some people surrounding him. And he shares stories. As you know, great leaders are great storytellers because you could share experience through the story that you can imagine and you can relate to. Jim, always going to be in our heart, and you're a family. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, Jim's daughter Liz is going to come up and say some words.
Hello. I am so grateful for the opportunity to be here and just to hear your stories, because he was a bigger than life personality. But I want to share with you something that he instilled in me. When I was about 10 years old, he found this poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson called Crossing the Bar. I'm 10 years old. He says, I want you to read this at my funeral. You know, that was before we called it Celebration of Life. And I'm like, okay. And he, about every 5 years, he would give me another copy and remind me. So I felt like the best tribute would be to read this because it was so important to him. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full of for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. May there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot's face when I have crossed the bar. Thank you so much. Dad did feel like you were family. And I actually, I never appreciated how committed he was to all of you and all of his clients until I was of an age to need to hire an attorney. He did always tell me that people pay me for my advice. You should listen to it. You get it for free. But we actually had a case that we needed to it was a real estate thing with my husband and I called him and he did not immediately call me back. And he was a young kid, he did a good job, but it was just so funny because ever since then I hold all attorneys to that bar that Dad said, because you're right, if he was representing you, he was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He was all about the underdog, the person who had been wronged, the person that no one would listen to, and you guys have been a family to him and are so gracious to have us here, and I'm just grateful and I appreciate it.
And lastly, we have Jim's wife, Bonnie, is going to come up.
I have to read my notes because I'll probably get very emotional, so I'm going to read them. So when Haas asked me to speak today for about 3 to 5 minutes, and believe me, I wasn't even sure if I could get through that. I thought, how do you summarize Jim's 40 years of legacy in this association in 5 minutes? And obviously I can't, and I won't. But I'll speak very briefly about his heart for this association and also for all of you. When Jim and I met about 30 years ago, of course I was 12 at the time. No. Actually, though, when I found out it was 1974 that he started with this association, I was really 17, so it was a long time before I met him. So that's not too far off, I will say that. But he was already representing, of course, this association. And when he told me that he was legal counsel for the ice cream industry and that every time he came to the convention, he could eat all the ice cream he wanted, I thought, boy, this guy's really trying to impress me. Ice cream. But believe me, it was all true, and of course the rest is history. I was very impressed, to say the least. All kidding aside, Jim was so honored to be part of this association for so many years, a lot of years. And of all the things he did, and he did a lot, this was the closest thing to his heart. It meant so much to him. But what he loved more than anything was the people. It wasn't even speaking at the convention or giving advice. It was the relationships that he made over the years, and you were all truly a family to him. Every year when we came to the convention, it was like coming to a family reunion, one that you really wanted to come to. Not always that way. We both look forward to it so much, and after a few years of me coming with him, you accepted me as part of the family as well, and for that I am truly grateful. We had a lot of fun with some of you guys that I see out there, and probably a little bit too much fun at times at these meetings. But we also visited some of you during the year when Jim was asked to come and help with various issues. We even attended a few family weddings here and there. We were always treated like royalty, and thank you for that. They were very special times for us. I won't name any names because there were so many of you, and I'm sure I would leave somebody out, but you know who you are. We are so grateful you have allowed the International Association of Ice Cream Distributors and Vendors to be a huge part of Jim's legacy. So on behalf of Jim's 2 daughters, Elizabeth, Sarah, that got sick right before she got on the airplane, Jess, 4 grandchildren, Jess, Braxton, Preston, and myself, who want to thank you for the great honor and the love that you had shown Jim over the years. And now to us during this very difficult time. We will always consider this association and all of you as family, as I know Jim did. It was such a privilege to him to be asked to serve as legal counsel for the Ice Cream Association, and he enjoyed every minute of it. And lastly, I'll close with this, and that was one of Jim's sayings, but one of his favorite sayings was, to make a long story short. And of course, they were never short. So 30 minutes later, he was still talking. That's all good lawyers do, I guess. But his favorite part of the convention was when he got the opportunity to spend one-on-one time with some of you, eating breakfast, drinking coffee, or sometimes just sitting by the pool. He was so proud of all of you, and he was so proud that he had a small part in making this association what it is today. You all should be very proud. I am sure Jim is eating ice cream somewhere up there. Somewhere up there he's eating ice cream. I love you guys, and thank you for letting me share.